Hey guys, I want to do a quick video because this came up today and this really throws me because I'm not sure what is causing so much willingness to put in effort to disparage, and in this case it's Spirit Airlines, but this one I notice a lot because living here in Nicaragua, Spirit has been and continues to be by far what I believe, and from many people that I've spoken to consistently, the most preferred airlines here. It is the airlines that gives the best deals, the best flights, the most reliable flights. And yet, whenever we talk about it, if we're talking to people who are here in Nicaragua and people who've actually flown it firsthand, we get reliably a story of, well, it's bare bones, but I'm very happy with it and I would fly it again. And I like it because, and I choose it because the times, the quick service, the reliability, the cost, all these things. And whenever we talk about it, we get a lot of people who jump on, and this happened today, where they'll talk about how awful it is, and you're taking your chances and all these things. And today, we had the article that we did for the 2025 How to Get to Nicaragua by Airlines, and immediately someone jumped on and of course, had these negative things to say about Spirit. Oh, it's bankrupt. You got to take your chances. Well, this is important to consider. Why would someone bring up bankruptcy in travel information, right? So this is an odd one to bring up because bankruptcy protection, Chapter 11 in the United States, does not imply that they're not operating or have any reason to risk operations. If you were an investor, of course, that would be something to seriously be concerned about and wonder what that means for your investment. But as a traveler, as a passenger, it's no effect on you whatsoever. It's a false thing to bring up. Feels inappropriate, right? Because it implies that there's some kind of risk caused by that. Why would we bring that up as travelers? There's ways to frame that if you're just bored and want to post, hey, are you aware that this went bankrupt? I sure hope they don't go under, or I wouldn't invest today. Okay, great. But it was done you're taking your chances on a flight based on something that doesn't relate to its ability to fly, which seems like a lot of effort to come up with a reason to not like the airlines. Now, dug into it a little bit, and this is important, right? My own experiences are anecdotal, as are other people's. Doing what I do talk to a lot of people who fly this specific flight path, and the reliability seems extremely high, and we watch this flight all the time because it's the one we all use most, and it's incredibly reliable. It's also worth noting this is not a connected flight. It goes from Managua to Miami and back all the time. That's all it does. The plane doesn't go anywhere else. The crew doesn't go anywhere else. And so you get to know the people on the crew. Really quickly, you learn this is super reliable. Spirit could completely shut down in the rest of the U.S., and this particular flight path will just keep going back and forth without even missing a beat because it's disconnected from the rest of the network. So even if someone was to bring up that there's a delay somewhere else, doesn't imply anything about this particular path. So we have to watch out for someone bringing that up, which, of course, in this discussion, he did. He said, once we said, that doesn't affect anything, why would you, it's, they're really risky and they have all these problems. And it wasn't too long ago that they were ranked number 2 best for not canceling flights, but it is true that pretty recently the FAA has had them listed as relatively bad for delays. Now, we have to be careful. Delays don't normally impact that many people too much. A few minutes of delay. If it's delayed by hours, of course it does. But typically delays are a few minutes, and it's weird to lump that into cancellations. People who care about getting somewhere don't care about a 8-minute delay, but they do care about having to go the next day or the next week or having to go buy another ticket or whatever. So those are not, I don't feel, honest things to lump together. And he did not. I'm talking about statistics that you find when you look at on the web and you're trying to figure out who has cancellations. It's very hard to because they want to lump in delays at all times, which completely muddies the water. It's kind of like saying, I really want to know what city is dangerous for homicides, and no one willing to give you a number without pickpockets being lumped into it. Like, that's great. That is a bad thing, but I'm not going to avoid a city because of pickpockets, but I might because of a really high homicide rate, if that makes sense. So cancellations are a big deal. I would worry about a cancellation for my flight out of Managua. But if it's delayed even by an hour, it's rare that I would care much at all. A little bit annoyed, but very little. I get delayed everywhere I go a little bit. Like, I've been flying for a long time. When I was a kid, delays are so common that now every time a flight boards on time, I'm shocked. I forget that that's how it mostly works now, even though I've been flying a lot for a long time. And he even brought up, didn't you just have a 48-hour ordeal on Spirit? I didn't. I had a 48-hour ordeal on Copa, but it was all exactly the flight that Copa was supposed to do. The flight was excellent. It just happened to take 48 hours to get all the places I had to go. So it's unfair to, one, accuse Spirit of something from Copa, and I don't know why he would assume that Spirit was related. It was a very good story about where all the places I was going. But the thing that I don't understand is, why is so much effort put into trying to make Spirit look bad? And I do think that this is probably the best vote. If you're ever wondering how much people believe in Spirit, look at what people who are disparaging Spirit have to say. Actually pay attention to what they say. Don't listen to people like me who've had good experiences on it, because that's anecdotal and I'm very happy with them. So I promote them a bit just because they've treated me really well. And I have a great story of the reason I started using Spirit originally was because United absolutely screwed me and my family over, and they made it crystal clear that they thought we were absolute idiots for having booked with United and doing round trip with United and being stuck with them. And we learned our lesson for sure. United was the best salespeople for Spirit I could possibly imagine. So that's why we switched, and we had never used Spirit before. We had never heard of Spirit before. This is 10 years ago. And when we switched, we got a much cheaper flight that was much better and got treated way better and felt respected by the airlines, and we've never looked back. So I went to Spirit for good reasons, and they've treated me well. So I have treated them well, and I stand by my experiences with them are consistently good. But that's anecdotal. You can't really use that. I mean, it's useful. I can tell you some information about it, and you can learn how to use them a little bit better. Watch out for, baggage fees that you're not planning on, but it's all on their website. It's really hard to miss. What's more meaningful is look for the people who are complaining about them and see what they have to say. There are legitimate complaints for every airline, right? I've got legitimate airline complaints for many airlines, but not Spirit, not Turkish, not LATAM, not Copa. I have some that have just been consistently really good. But when I talk to people about Spirit, and nothing sells something more than paying attention to what the complaints are and seeing if the complaints are valid. Complaints typically include they're really low cost, and I don't trust things where I don't overpay. Okay. They don't have a lot of fancy stuff. Okay, but you know that ahead of time. And one thing I do want to point out is I'm a bigger guy, and I really appreciate the bigger space around the seats on Spirit. They don't look like they have more space because they're a little bit closer, but the space that you lose is not space that your body goes in. The actual space your body goes in on Spirit is more open than other airlines that I fly. Now, I don't fly first class. I fly coach because I'm cheap, but you get more space. So I actually like the comfort on Spirit more than other airlines. That's a big deal. Not a reason that I would pick them. It's not that big of a deal, but I appreciate it every time. So if anyone tries to imply cheap ones, point out, one of the reasons that Scott uses them is he gets more space than on any other airline that's available in the region. Not a ton, just a little bit, but every little bit matters. And people will say, well, I had to pay for all this extra baggage. You're like, okay, but their website is beyond clear that you get this baggage allowance. And who doesn't know that you have to plan for your baggage no matter what airline you're flying? Every airline has different rules. I'm flying Avianca again pretty soon, and on those flights, we have weird luggage allowances. They're not hard, but they're unusual. We have to plan around it. We have to weigh every bag. We do this for every time we go anywhere and have for forever. It's just part of being adults who fly, right? So being caught off guard by that, by Spirit, just own it and say, I don't know how to fly and I was an idiot. It happens, and that's fine. But blaming Spirit for your mistake that would have happened to any airline is not fair. But a lot of people, that's what they're complaining about. So they're actually complaining about themselves, not a problem with Spirit in that case. So that's important to look out for. Or, now that was not something that was mentioned today, but something that was mentioned, and this is another thing. People don't say that they've had a problem with the flights. They've heard of people having problems with the flights. And of course, those people are there to tell you what exactly went wrong. Was it a 3-minute delay, or was it 5 cancellations in a row? One doesn't matter. One is horrendous, right? So it's important what those things are. And where were those flights? Were they to Managua? Okay, so if there's delays and cancellations other places, we may generally be less willing to choose an airlines, but should that really impact your decision about an unrelated flight path that is not connected to those other things, and it itself basically has no cancellations or delays? Everything does, but not very many. It's a very reliable flight path. Should you put yourself into a more expensive, less reliable flight because you are upset-ish at an airline, you don't fly, having delays, places you don't go. It's a disconnection that doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's kind of like saying, I don't want to ride with this driver that's really safe on this road because a different driver from the same company on a different road tends not to be that safe. Well, that's why you don't do that other thing, but you don't want to get with a more reckless driver here and put yourself in danger just because of this bizarre interconnection between illogical things in your mind, right? You want to work on what things actually matter. So if I'm flying around the US and I'm really worried about being delayed, Spirit may not be my first choice. Generally, I don't care and I'm going to fly them anyway. But if I have really, really tight concerns about that, I might fly someone like Delta. However, Delta has booted me from flights, not booted, but not let me on, along with a lot of other people, because they oversold flights. Not because we did anything. They let, everyone who arrived, they closed the gate early and took off. And I have experienced very, very, very sexist behavior from Delta, not towards me, but towards women I was there in the crowd with. That was absolutely disgusting, and I will never fly Delta if I can help it. On that alone, I think it's unethical to do so. They were beyond terrible and should have been shut down, right? That is, I don't think it's right for Delta to fly based on the behavior I saw firsthand. But also, just not letting people on their flights, overselling and lying about it to make their money. So that's, to me, far worse than a cancellation, because it's a dishonest cancellation. Real cancellations they have to admit to, but they have this stuff that they do, and lots of airlines do. I'm not trying to single out Delta. They happen to be the worst I've ever experienced myself. But there's these techniques they use to kick you off of planes or keep you from getting onto planes, lying about requirements, pretending they didn't put in paperwork. And I've had other airlines be really, really bad at this to me as well. And so those things really matter, that I can't get to my destination and have no recourse as a passenger. Those are things I really care about, even more than cancellations. Those are the absolute worst things. Well, I suppose being beaten on the plane, but I don't know anyone who's doing that. So those are things I worry about. With Spirit, I don't worry about those things. Maybe I should, but I don't know of anyone who's had that happen to them on Spirit. I think maybe one time I've heard about it. And it was something they could resolve, but they did get pushed around a little bit, but they did get on their flight. But those are things I don't have to worry about. But with Delta, with Avianca, I've completely not made it to places I needed to go, even though I was on time and had nothing wrong on my end. They simply oversold the flights and didn't let people onto the planes, in some cases multiple times. Those are the biggest deals. Those are the things I actually worry about. So that's one of the reasons I fly Spirit, is because I'm less concerned about the airplane getting to its destination on time. I'm worried about me getting to my destination. That's my actual goal. And very few people actually talk about that goal. They talk about every ancillary proxy thing when they're upset about an airline, or when they're trying to make you upset about an airline. So one of the things that I really want people to look into, and I want you guys to leave comments, like what airlines, like coming here to Nicaragua, when are you having problems? What airlines are you having problems with? And what are those problems? And are they your problems, or just a story you've heard from someone, or a story you've heard from someone telling from someone else, right? Because there seems to be a lot of this, someone out there claims to have had a problem. But when we get to firsthand ones, no one ever seems to really have one. And so it makes me think that there's a lot of stories floating around. And the thing that surprises me is how much effort seems to go into we post something that shows, oh yeah, we had a good experience with Spirit. Immediately someone jumps in with trying to create fear and uncertainty and doubt about flying on a low-cost airlines, flying on a bankrupt airlines, flying on Spirit, whatever. What's motivating people to work so hard to try to disparage an airlines? It's very strange. Now, if you had firsthand, like, look, they treated me terribly. Okay, I've been really treated terribly by some airlines. I put far less effort into, I've never once followed Delta on social media and posted something about how badly they treated me. I know I'm using them as an anecdote now, but only as a reference for something that these things have happened. And that was a long time ago, right? That was 10 years ago. It was immediately before United treating us badly. And United did not treat us nearly as badly as Delta or Avianca, but just to be clear, United was more clear that we were idiots to fly with them. Delta was just like, we hate you and everyone else in this airport, because there was a lot of people. I've never seen, ever in my life, I've never heard of so many people being just barred from getting on a plane. They must have oversold half the plane. It was so ridiculous. But to put in this effort of following around and going after an airlines. And in this case, it seems that the person has never even flown Spirit. So where does the motivation to spread implications, right? The implication that the bankruptcy does something it doesn't do, or the implication that these people who they've heard from having delays somewhere else in the system is going to affect you. And they use terms like, well, you'll be taking your chances. Well, one of the reasons we choose Spirit is to take fewer chances, right? So they're using, oh, you don't want to reduce your risk because it's too risky. Well, fundamentally, something's not very understood there, right? So using these terms like taking your risk on the most reliable path, I mean, everything's a risk, but that's the least risk. So it's trying to scare people from it. It doesn't feel straightforward. Something's going on. Now, let's be clear. We talked about this on the Thursday live stream, which we try to do every Thursday, by the way. I know we've missed a few and we've had some technical problems. We're going to try OBS this week and see if we can get that to work a little bit better. We're wondering if it's a mechanical or electrical issue here with my equipment. So we're trying out some things. We did some tests last week and did get some stuff to work. So we're just lost as to what's actually going on. But someone was talking about that they actually found from Los Angeles better flights than Spirit on Copa. There's a layover, but it's better price and really, really convenient. So Spirit is not always the right choice, even if you're just looking at lowest cost or most convenient. It's just one of a lot of decent choices. And to be clear, even though I've been mistreated by Avianca, I've been flying them a lot recently and no problems at all. And Copa has been fantastic. I've never had a problem with them or on LATAM or Turkish or so forth. There's lots of airlines that I like and promote, just Spirit is one that happens to be relevant to my audience, that this is the airlines we use for getting to and from North America. Under most circumstances, it's easy and convenient and reliable. And that's why we talk about it so much, and so many people take it. It must be really close to 50% of my audience that I speak to end up taking Spirit if they're flying in, unless they have an animal, because they don't take animals on Spirit, unfortunately. So people who have pets, they come in wherever they can. But those who are flying without animals to Nicaragua from the United States or from Canada typically fly Spirit. And when we hear from people who avoid flying Spirit because, oh, I don't really want to, consistently they get here and they have all these horror stories of their flight, often very delayed, often big problems because of their connections and things that we have never experienced. Now, knock on wood, I'm heading to the U.S. shortly, but not on Spirit because I'm going different places. So I'll be flying Avianca back to the U.S. We'll report on that. It'll probably be fine. But it seems very odd. And I think it's worth really looking. When you get these kinds of negative comments, doesn't it tell you that somebody feels, I don't know, threatened by the quality and reliability of Spirit to the point that they're pushing for people to come and hint that there's problems that don't really logically make sense, that the anecdotes don't really add up quite? But I mean, they could be real anecdotes, but do they apply to this scenario? Should they lead someone to think this? No. Like, there's a lot of work that seems to go in that no other airline seems to get. But no other airlines, when I talk to people firsthand, again, anecdotal, like take that with a grain of salt. But I talk to more people than most, and the results with Spirit seem to be some of the best. Why does that all add up? The only thing that seems to make sense is some airlines or group of airlines are paying people to go out and make these remarks. But dig into them, I think you'll find, and this is true with all kinds of things, it's a good general learning thing, how to look at reviews, look and see, is this review actually seem legit? Does it seem like they're actually talking about something that relates to you, relates to the product, actually results in the fear that it's creating? And of course, you have to take positive reviews with a grain of salt, right? And there's very little to go on typically with positives. With negatives, you have to look at what they're saying is negative and determine, is that a true negative or did they make a mistake? Oh, they didn't take my luggage. Did you not pay for your luggage? Right? We get these things a lot. People often say things like, oh, I wasn't able to return to Nicaragua. And then people run with that story and say they were banned from Nicaragua. And then when you actually talk to them and say, you were banned from Nicaragua? Well, I wasn't banned. You're like, oh, okay. Why couldn't you come back? Well, I got busy with life and just never made it back. I'm like, that's not, I couldn't make it back. That's, I didn't make it back, right? Those things become very skewed stories. And it's important to dig into those things when you're looking at negatives and someone's trying to manipulate your opinion. And certainly I'm promoting Spirit. So be careful with, I have a very rosy-eyed very rose-colored glasses view of Spirit, because my own experiences have been really good with them. And when I've not flown with them, I have been taught my lessons by the airlines down here. And so I have a tendency to promote them maybe more than they deserve. And I understand that. And that makes sense. And you guys should understand that context and perspective, but you need to look similarly at negative ones when people come on. And so this person today, who had lots of negative things to say about Spirit, when I really dig into them, I feel like they actually had a lot of confidence in Spirit and were grasping at straws to try to come up with ways to make it sound less than ideal. And that tells me more than anything. Anyway, get down there in those comments. Let me know what you think about this. I'm doing an extra video real quickly while I'm downloading other stuff for today's video. So this is just an extra, but I wanted to get this out because this seems to come up a lot with Spirit. And it really feels to me like people believe in it, but don't like that they believe in it. I don't know why that would be. What makes people act this way unless they're getting paid? I just don't get it. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you guys in a little bit.